With Arsene Wenger at the helm, FIFA are exploring the idea of holding the World Cup every 2 years, and their proposal will go to a vote later this year. Hey, I'm Adrian, and thanks for coming back to the channel for those who are subscribed, of course, and a welcome to the newcomers as well. You can join our community, by the way. It's free, but wait until you watch some of the content. You know, no peer pressure to just blindly subscribe. So, today, we'll look at where this proposal came from because it's been thrown around for a couple of decades, actually. The reaction to it, as well as the feasibility of it, with some of my opinion mixed in towards the end. But at the beginning of the video is where we thank our sponsors. OneFootball. OneFootball's app is my go-to when it comes to following football on the go, as the customizable news feed keeps me up to date on all of the competitions, clubs, national teams even, and players that I care about by following them through the app. I can keep track of matches live with their match tickers, watch videos and highlights, track transfers, and read up on the latest breaking news. So if this sounds great to you, and come on, it has to, then take advantage of a free download by using the link in the description. Help me help you with some great football coverage. All right, folks, let's go back to 1999. The idea to have a World Cup tournament every 2 years was actually floated by the now infamous, slightly infamous, former FIFA president Sepp Blatter more than 20 years ago. Back in January of 1999, Blatter said, quote, "I want a football world championship every 2 years. Then the national teams will get the rankings they deserve. The existing 4-year tournament is out of date. It dates from the 1930s, when teams chugged from one continent to another on ships." I found that quote in a Guardian article from 1999, by the way. I've linked to it and the rest of my sources for this video in the description, as per usual. So anyway, with this idea from Blatter, it would have gone into effect following the World Cup in Germany in 2006. As we know, that never happened, and the talks of it didn't really gather much steam for a while, until, well, 19 years later in 2018. Alejandro Dominguez, the president of CONMEBOL, retabled the idea of a biennial World Cup back in 2018, though he too has softened his stance on it after considering how a biennial World Cup would affect Copa America. But back in March of 2021, Arsene Wenger, who is of course the head of global development for FIFA, spoke of how a biennial World Cup should be considered, drawing upon an argument that Dominguez had made previously, that players deserve the chance to take part in more World Cups. The argument being that the players would like it. And as for the supporters, who doesn't love a bit of World Cup, eh? For the players, Arsene Wenger also highlighted how, if you get injured for one World Cup, you may not get another chance for 4 years. That's, one chance every 8 years. That's huge, considering how short a career is. Jump ahead 2 months to May of 2021, and during the FIFA annual meeting, which consists of all 211 member nations, the Saudi Arabian Football Federation made a proposal to FIFA, quote, requesting a feasibility study to be carried out on the impact of having a World Cup every 2 years for both the men and the women. Approval of this new format will come down to a vote on the matter, which will be carried out in December of 2021. So how did the people in power positions react to this feasibility study on the biennial World Cup? On Monday, the European Club Association, or ECA, held their annual meeting, and both UEFA President Alexander Ceferin and ECA President Nasser Al-Khelaifi spoke of FIFA's study. Let's start with Ceferin, Big Chef. Quote, "You have probably heard that FIFA is conducting a feasibility study about the World Cup every 2 years. Well, we think that the jewel of the World Cup has value precisely because of its rarity. Holding it every 2 years will lead to less legitimacy, and it will unfortunately dilute the World Cup itself. Our players don't need to see more of their summer spent at tournaments, rather than devoted to relaxation and recuperation." And as for the new president of ECA, Nasser Al-Khelaifi, he spoke of how FIFA needs to work with the various confederations on the matter, as the key is, quote, honest engagement, not unilateral and self-interested decisions. Overscheduled and disrupted matches put the players' health and well-being at risk, and the clubs bear all the risk. International competition cannot suffocate fans' and players' connections to clubs, without which international competition wouldn't exist. Without quoting every single person who has ever shared an opinion on the matter, the words of Ceferin have been echoed for the most part. Having the World Cup every 2 years does diminish some of its appeal. More can, in fact, feel like less sometimes. So while everything before this point of the video was me just reporting on the news and what has been said or done by the respective parties, my opinion will come into play during this final segment, but I'll try to make that clear when it's Adrian speaking versus just reporting on facts. So, I think we all see the direction that football is trying to head in. More matches, more frequent tournaments with more teams involved. The reason for this is, of course, partially financially, largely financially. More matches, more iterations of a tournament, in theory, would lead to more sponsorship money. We've seen the UEFA European Championships expand from 16 to 24 teams for the past 2 editions of the tournament, and there was more profit because of it, at least in 2016, as they were hamstrung for the 2020 edition of the postponed tournament due to capacity limitations. Following his election in 2016, Gianni Infantino increased the number of teams at the World Cup itself, expanding from 32 to 48 teams. The first 48-team World Cup will take place, of course, in 2026, hosted by Mexico, the USA, and Canada. And so following in Infantino's quest to create bigger tournaments more frequently as well, Infantino's changes to the Club World Cup fall under the former. The revamped format will lead to a bigger tournament once every 4 years, so less frequent. The first edition of which was actually slated to take place this year, but has been shelved for the moment due to the pandemic. But that's been FIFA under Infantino, bigger tournaments, and now moving to more frequent ones. Beyond the financials, UEFA, FIFA, and other confederations or FIFA member associations will always point toward how bigger international tournaments helps to grow the game by giving opportunities to other countries that typically don't make it to the World Cup. If you have more World Cups with more teams involved, you have a higher chance of making it. Opinion time. Nobody is really right or wrong on this. It comes down to personal taste when we're speaking as viewers of the game. But I think there is definitely something to the argument that increasing the amount of games even further for players, increased travel, decreased rest time. If we look at this from a 360 holistic point of view, I'm not sure that it makes a lot of sense overall from the sporting side of things. We saw how the pandemic-enforced condensed European football schedule has affected the fitness of players. Injury crises have become all too common. I mean, if we look at players, like a huge extreme example, of course, is Pedri, who played a seemingly never-ending season during 2020-21, which saw him feature so prominently for Barcelona, then for Spain at the Euros, then for Spain at the Olympics right after that. I mean, that's a prime candidate for burnout. And cases like this would likely become all the more common if we had World Cup one summer, then a European Championship the next, and then another World Cup the next summer, and then a Nations League finals, which of course is small potatoes. But still, we don't need more games, we need fewer. And for the idea of exploring this topic right after or during a pandemic, I should say, when we saw how a condensed schedule affected players firsthand, it's a bit strange. The end of my opinion. So, will it actually happen? I mean, the chances are not zero, that's for sure. Here's a great take from an article that Steve Price wrote for Forbes. There are 3 main forces in world soccer at the moment: FIFA, UEFA, and a small group of super clubs like Real Madrid and Manchester United. Each wants a larger slice of the pie, but the pie is finite. There are only so many top players, and there are only so many times they can physically play each year. Most of the money generated by these top players is concentrated in the top clubs, and UEFA through the Champions League. The rest of the world is on the outside looking in. They get money from FIFA, and subsequently are likely to vote for ideas that bring FIFA more money. One of the upcoming battles for sponsorship money will be between FIFA and UEFA by way of the Club World Cup. The new format is much more attractive, especially from a sponsorship point of view. You have the Champions League winners from the past 4 years, the Europa League winners, Copa Libertadores winners, and then the champions drawn from the remaining confederations, all playing in the same 24-team tournament. As Steve Price wrote, it's going to be a battle to lock down funds, and like it or not, fan sentiment won't really decide this. If a biennial World Cup suits the majority of the 211 member nations of FIFA, which in theory it would, at least financially, then it's likely that we'll see a World Cup every 2 years. But who knows? I can't see the future. But what do you guys think? Are you into it, or do you hope that the status quo remains? Let me know in the comments. Interested to hear what you guys have to say about this one. Beyond that though, we'll of course have another video for you tomorrow and a live stream on Friday. My name's Adrian, I thank you for watching, and have a good one. Peace.